let's talk about drugging yourself to sleep, because I get this question a ton. Can I just take an Ambien? I have a chapter about this in my book. No, you can't just take an Ambien, and I'm going to tell you why. First and foremost, as I disclosed in the beginning of this program, and I'll do it again, I'm a national board certified health and wellness coach. So what that means is that I will never put anybody on anything or take anybody off of anything that's been prescribed by a doctor. So if you're currently taking prescription meds to sleep, you need to stay with those, and you need to discuss it with your doctor before you come off or make any changes based on what I say. What I say is going to be secondary to what your doctor has prescribed. So if that's the case, then you might want to skip over this video. But if you are not currently on any prescription drugs for sleep, let's talk about what they are and why they're so problematic. So first and foremost, most doctors like to prescribe drugs called benzos or benzodiazepines. Benzo is short for benzodiazepine. Benzos look like this. They look like Klonopin. They look like Xanax. They look like Valium. Benzodiazepines are basically GABA recepting drugs. So in your brain, you have a neurotransmitter called GABA, and GABA is responsible for making your brain feel relaxed. So what the benzodiazepines or benzos do is they give your brain GABA. Now, you can give your brain GABA on your own. You can go to a health food store or Amazon. You can order GABA, chewable GABA, GABA that you swallow. There's, foods that I recommended in my book that you can take that are very GABA-inducing foods. So a lot of people don't realize this. They go to their doctor and they say, I'm not sleeping and I don't know what to do. And the doctors write them a prescription for Klonopin or for Xanax. And so benzodiazepines are super, super addictive. They've got a black box warning, which is a narcotic warning. You cannot take them with alcohol. You cannot take them with any other pain meds, fentanyl, opiates, anything like that. And to get off benzodiazepines is very challenging. In my book, I write about an interview that Lisa Ling did with a bunch of doctors, because it seems that benzos are like the new drug of choice for people who need to relax or have anxiety or can't sleep, especially for women. Take a Valium, take a Xanax. And they're highly, highly addictive and very, very difficult. You have to microdose very, very slowly to get off of them, even after being on them for a week or two. And they have horrible side effects, suicide, depression, death. They're no joke. And so I highly recommend that if you're not on a benzo, or if you're considering taking a benzo, you do your research really, really well, because it's a life-altering decision to go on benzos. It's not something to take lightly. The second drug that's constantly prescribed for people who can't sleep are called the insomnia aids, which are the sedative hypnotics. And those are like your Ambien, your Enermezzo, things like that. And so they're considered to be less addictive than benzos, which is not necessarily true. Their addictive window is within the first 2 weeks. You can become very addicted to them. Benzos are addictive the first day you take them, which is why they have the black box warning. But Ambiens are thought to be, and Intermezzos, these types of sedatives, are thought to be, by doctors, less addictive and less hard to get off. And so I would disagree with that. I would say that they're just as addictive and they're just as hard to get off. Because of people think that they're no big deal, that's what makes them a big deal, because they can easily be overused and abused. And that's how they're marketed. They're marketed to be, like, have a restless night, great, take an Ambien or take a half an Ambien. Ambien does something similar to the benzos, the sedatives. It actually does two things. One, it causes you to increase your GABA intake in your brain, like I said, which you can do naturally on your own. And it also calms the central nervous system. So that's why people like it. But it makes you do crazy things. It makes you wander around your neighborhood, in your underwear. It makes you not wake up on an airplane and end up in some random place somewhere. Because it depresses the central nervous system, you cannot drive. You cannot operate heavy machinery. You shouldn't be working. You shouldn't be parenting, taking care of children. There's a lot of things that you can't do, even just taking a half an Ambien or a quarter of an Ambien. I highly recommend that you try some natural supplements first before you turn to prescription sleep aids, because they're dangerous and they're easily addictive, and they can do a lot of negative things to your body and to your life. So let's talk about some positive things that you can do yourself that you can try. GABA is a neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters are chemical receptors in your brain. And you have a couple of big ones that we're going to touch on. So you have serotonin, which is the neurotransmitter that's responsible for making you feel happy and joyful and peaceful, and life is fun, and it just gives you an overall sense of feeling really great. You get a lot of serotonin when you exercise, sweaty, exercise, you get your heart rate up, you walk hills, you do, dance classes, whatever it is that you do, where you're really, sweaty yoga, whatever you're doing that really gets a sweat on and gets your heart pumping, you're going to get a bump up of serotonin in your brain, which is really important. The other way that people get a bump of serotonin is to eat sugar. So people that I work with, women that I work with that tend to have really bad sugar cravings, tend to be low in serotonin. And so they have these like insane sugar cravings because the brain is trying, or carbs are also sugar in your body. So your body is trying to supplement its serotonin levels with food. And so that's an important thing to watch. So you can take the precursor for serotonin. Obviously you can up your exercise level, but you can also take the precursor to serotonin. It's called 5-HTP. It's in an herb called St. John's wort, or you can just take it directly sublingual under your tongue or on top of your tongue. And I work with a lot of clients that use that, and it really helps to just make them feel better. They have more energy, they sleep better, they feel better. Certainly in your cycle, depending on where your cycle is, your hormones are going to go up and then they're going to drop, pre-ovulation, post-ovulation. Or if you're perimenopausal or even postmenopausal, you might not have enough serotonin, or you might have times in your cycle where you're like, oh, I just want chocolate cookie. I just want brownies. I just, like you start to crave that sugar, and that's tied to the lack of serotonin that your body is producing because of where your hormones are at. So that's a pretty natural, normal thing. Taking a little 5-HTP is going to help take you over that bump, or maybe even upping up your exercise is going to help take you over that bump. If you don't have enough serotonin in your brain, you're not going to sleep well at night. And you're pretty much just going to feel crappy all day. You're going to be irritable. You're going to be moody. Things just are not gonna be right for you. And people with low serotonin in their brains are, their brains don't work right. They have brain fog. They can't remember things. They're just not fun people to be around. We all know what that's like. So serotonin makes you feel good. So you want to consider using some 5-HTP, or you want to consider upping your exercise. Another neurotransmitter that we need to talk about that's important is dopamine. So dopamine is responsible for you feeling happy and enthusiastic and motivated. Dopamine, you get a dopamine hit every single time somebody likes one of your posts on Facebook, or somebody makes a comment on Instagram, or you get a new client, or you tackle a project. I had this great business coach that did a whole thing on procrastination. And if you can just do one thing in the project that you've been procrastinating on, you'll get a dopamine hit, and your brain will feel better. And then you want to do another thing and another thing. And so over time, you'll actually be able to tackle the project because your brain will keep getting dopamine hits. It's kind of like a slot machine in Vegas. So dopamine is a really important thing that you need to have if you want to sleep well. And the precursor to dopamine is L-Theanine. And L-Theanine is in your green teas. It's in your Tulsi tea that I recommended in the last module that you consider. L-Theanine is a really great precursor to dopamine. So you want to make sure that you're getting some of that in your life. If you can crowd out your coffee in the morning with some matcha, or with some other green teas, or with some Tulsi teas, you're going to see a nice increase in your L-Theanine. The next neurotransmitter to talk about is GABA. So we talked about GABA when we discussed earlier in this video about the benzodiazepines, and also about Ambien. So that's what they're messing with in your brain that's going to help you sleep. I take a chewable GABA every night before I go to bed. I take 100 mgs. You can take anywhere from 100 to 500 depending on how messed up your sleep is and what your stress level is. But GABA and dopamine, they kind of go together. They make you feel relaxed. They make you feel happy. They make you, be able to tackle things and have a clear brain. So GABA is a really important thing. GABA and L-Theanine are buddies. They are actually taken up in the brain at the same time. So if you want to take a sleep supplement before you go to bed and you want to take some L-Theanine, obviously you don't want to drink green tea at night because it's got caffeine in it. So if you're going to take an L-Theanine supplement, take it with your GABA because they're buddies and they work really, really well together. The last thing is melatonin. People ask me about melatonin. My answer to melatonin is kind of a mixed one. The melatonin that's on the market that you find at Whole Foods or Sprouts or wherever you shop, most likely is not FDA approved. Melatonin is a hormone. It is not a neurotransmitter. And so if you take too much melatonin, you rely too much on it, your body is going to stop producing it. Just like if you take a thyroid med, your body's not going to be producing your thyroid anymore. You take a birth control pill, your body's not going to be producing your own estrogen or progesterone. So it's really important that if you're going to take melatonin, don't take it for more than 3 nights, or your body is just not going to be able to make its own. You just want to take enough to give your body a little bounce of melatonin so that you can figure out whatever you're doing. So like for my clients that travel a lot, I recommend that they take a melatonin on the airplane, and then they take a melatonin when they get to the new time zone. And then that 3rd night, if they still need help sleeping, they take a half. And then the 4th night, if they need to take another half, great, or if they can just wean off, great. So it's about a 3-night process of using melatonin. And if you're waking up in the middle of the night and you want to take a melatonin, I would say that would be fine. You can find the sublingual spray that you can take, but I would rather just troubleshoot why you're waking up in the middle of the night and see if we can maybe dial it back to earlier in the day to see if we can figure that out. But, melatonin is a good thing to have. There's been a lot of great studies with COVID saying that melatonin is helpful for keeping the immune system up. And a lot of that is just because melatonin helps you sleep. And like we discussed, you make your fighter immune cells when you sleep. So I like melatonin. I'm just cautious with using it all the time. Your body, hopefully if you're exercising, hopefully if you're eating well, hopefully if you're not drinking too much alcohol, your body should be able, and using too much blue light in the evening, you want to turn off your blue light an hour before bed so that your body can start making proper melatonin to fall asleep and stay asleep. So I think that if you're just sort of respecting your body's ability to make the melatonin and just giving it a little boost, I think it's great. I think if you're leaning on it as a crutch, I think it can be a problem. So bring any questions that you have to the coaching call, like I say after every video, because there's a lot of information in this module, and there's a lot of things that might work for you, might not work for you. But we're going to have to play around with it and see what we can do. Oh, and then before I end, there's a couple of other things that we need to talk about as far as sleep supplements go. One are your B vitamins. So your vitamin B12 and your vitamin B6. Those are super important in regulating your sleep cycles. They help to regulate your circadian rhythm, which should coincide with the daylight, nighttime hours. So people who tend to be night owls that don't go to sleep until late, it's usually a vitamin B deficiency. So make sure you're taking like a vitamin B complex and that it's methylated. We talked about that in the nutrition video because not everybody has the genes to be able to methylate their vitamins. So B6, B12, and the last one, change my notes here and see. Last 2, magnesium. I love magnesium. I'm a big fan of magnesium. You got to be taking magnesium. We are all so chronically deficient in magnesium. It used to be in our soil. Our grandparents and great-grandparents had it in their food sources. We don't, especially Americans. Our soil is depleted. Roundup is sprayed on it. You have tons of chemicals in it. Things are GMO. We just don't get what we need anymore in our food supply. So you need to take a magnesium supplement. I'm not a fan of the gummies because they're loaded with sugar. And the last thing you want to do before you go to bed is eat a bunch of sugar. So if you can drink the powdered magnesium, that's fantastic. If you can take a bath and put some Epsom salts in your bath because you can absorb magnesium through your skin. There's also magnesium oil that you can take in the evening. So if you take a warm shower before you go to bed, you can rub magnesium oil on your body. It relaxes your muscles. It helps you sleep. It's like a wondrous thing. Every cell in your body has a magnesium receptor in it. So magnesium is really the way to go. I give magnesium to my kids when they can't rest, or if they're having anxiety or restless thoughts, restless leg syndrome, all of those things. Magnesium is incredibly helpful with that. And then vitamin D. We have to talk about vitamin D. If your vitamin D levels are off, you're not going to sleep very well. So again, your body has massive receptors. Almost every cell in your body has receptors for vitamin D. Vitamin D is a hormone. Most people don't realize that. Like melatonin, it's a hormone. And if you can't synthesize this hormone from the sunlight, there's not enough sunlight in the town that you live in, or your skin is unable to methylate vitamin D, which means break it down and absorb it and use it, you need to take a supplement. Vitamin D3 is the supplement that I recommend you take. And the way that you know how your vitamin D levels are is you have your blood checked. So it's really important that you make an appointment. I would actually have your vitamin B levels checked too. I write a story in my book about how I went to see an endocrinologist when I started having hot flashes for perimenopause, and she was like, your vitamin D levels, Shawna, my vitamin B levels are absolutely subpar, as are your vitamin D levels. So when I went to nutrition school almost 3 years ago, we were taught that the vitamin D levels should be between 40 and 60. And now with COVID, they've upped it to 60 to 90. So if you know what your vitamin D levels are, and you've had blood work done, please take a look. If your levels are under 60 or in the 60 to 80 range, I recommend you taking a supplement. If you're closer to the 90 range, then you're probably good. Most women are deficient in vitamin D. We wear sunscreen, we cover up in the sun, we don't want to have wrinkles, we don't want sun damage, and so, or we lack the ability to methylate vitamin D. And so it's really, really important that you take a supplement and that you talk to your doctor about what that supplement should be. I think on my last endocrinologist appointment, and I take like a 5,000 IU a day of vitamin D, and I was only in the 20 range, which was shocking to me because I thought that with taking that large of a supplement that my vitamin D levels would be much higher. I think I was like 26, 27. And so it's important to get them checked, and it's important to get them rechecked. So every time you get blood work done, make sure you get your vitamin D levels checked. And vitamin D, you know, having a vitamin D deficiency plays into all different kinds of cancer, plays into heart disease, plays into, you know, possible brain health problems. And so you just really want to know, and you just really want to be able to troubleshoot that. And it will affect your sleep.